What if the faces you adored on the silver screen were never real to begin with? Behind every dazzling close-up in Hollywood's golden age, there was a blade, a scalpel, a strip of chemical bleach, and a contract that demanded transformation not of character, but of flesh. In an era when stars were forged, not discovered, the studios held more than just career power, they owned appearances. That perfect nose? It was carved by a surgeon. That radiant skin? Sometimes the result of harsh bleaching agents. Hairlines receded on command, cheekbones sharpened in hidden clinics, and entire faces were resculpted to meet the aesthetic of a market dictated by moguls in monochrome suits. Some of the biggest legends' names you revere, posters you hang, walked into casting calls with one face and emerged under contract with another. But no one asked, and no one told. This isn't about vanity, it's about compliance, control, and an industry so obsessed with illusion, it demanded its players remake themselves to fit the fantasy. What was the price of fame when it came with a scalpel in hand? Which transformation was the most shocking? Which face hid the deepest secret? Let's peel back the powder, lift the wigs, and cut through the glamour. You're about to see Hollywood as you've never seen it before, stitched, bleached, and built from fear. 1. Anthony Perkins. A smile trained, a shadow hidden. Long before he terrified audiences as Norman Bates in Psycho, Anthony Perkins was groomed by Paramount as the next romantic lead. Tall, intelligent, boyishly handsome, he had all the ingredients. But the studio saw flaws not in his appearance, but in his aura. They wanted charm. He radiated restraint. They wanted warmth. He projected tension, so they intervened. Executives assigned him to facial behavior specialists, who trained him to smile wider, blink less, tilt his head just so everything to disguise the inner storm he could never quite hide. Makeup artists applied highlighters to soften his angular face, reshaping shadows so he'd appear more approachable. But the real transformation was deeper. Perkins, a closeted gay man in an industry hostile to difference, was instructed to date actresses for publicity. His romantic identity was choreographed, his body language corrected, his speech filtered through rehearsed charm. The irony? It was precisely those suppressed shadows that made his performance in Psycho so unforgettable. Norman Bates wasn't a stretch, it was a release. In interviews, Perkins spoke of masks and mirrors, of roles that consumed him, of studios that tried to rewire him. I had to smile even when it hurt, especially then. Was Anthony Perkins hiding behind his roles, or was Hollywood hiding him behind theirs? He was the perfect leading man, until the mask cracked and the shadow got out. 2. Ava Gardner. Painted perfection, private despair. Ava Gardner was the very image of seduction, emerald eyes, flawless cheekbones, a voice like velvet smoke. But the woman who enchanted millions had to fight, alter, and disguise herself just to be seen. When MGM first signed her in the early 1940 seconds, they were enchanted by her raw southern beauty until they decided it needed refining. Her Carolina accent was deemed unmarketable. She was assigned a diction coach to drill out every syllable of her upbringing. Her nose was considered too broad and unphotogenic, so they contoured it heavily with makeup, shadowing her natural features beneath layers of studio paint. Photographers were instructed to never shoot her from the left side, which executives believed showed a minor facial asymmetry. Stylists insisted on darkening her hair and thinning her eyebrows to match the rising standards of screen sensuality. But perhaps the most damaging transformation wasn't physical, it was emotional. To preserve her mystique, Gardner was forbidden from public vulnerability. When she showed signs of fatigue or emotional stress, publicists rushed in with fresh makeup and sharper lighting. Her real moods were redacted, her breakdowns covered in gloss. In a letter to a friend, she once wrote, "They want me to be a woman I don't recognize, even in the mirror." Was Ava Gardner the ultimate femme fatale, or just another woman hollowed out to fit a frame? The answer depends on which Ava you believe in, the one on celluloid or the one MGM edited out. 3. Tony Curtis. The accent, the jawline, and the manufactured star. Before he was Tony Curtis, he was Bernard Schwartz, a Bronx-born son of Hungarian immigrants with a thick accent, a crooked smile, and dreams too big for his upbringing. When Universal Pictures discovered him, they didn't just change his name, they redesigned him from tongue to temple. The studio sent him to speech training boot camps, where he was drilled to erase every trace of his working-class New York voice. His natural accent, full of grit and charm, was deemed too urban, too ethnic, too Jewish. He practiced vowel sounds until his throat burned. Off camera, he was forbidden to slip. Then came the face. Curtis's jaw was reshaped with orthodontic work and minor surgery to square out the edges. His teeth were capped and bleached. His dark hair was lightened and oiled to catch studio lights just right. Makeup teams carved shadows onto his cheeks with precision, contouring masculinity into every frame. Tony Curtis didn't just become a movie star, he became the idealized American male, a transformation as manufactured as any set on the Universal lot. But the illusion had its cracks. In interviews, Curtis later admitted he was always playing a part, even off-screen. "They gave me the tools, the face, the name," he said, "but they never let me be Bernie." Did Curtis ever fully inhabit the identity Hollywood gave him, or did he merely wear it like another costume? 4. Hedy Lamarr. Beauty engineered, intelligence erased. To millions, Hedy Lamarr was the embodiment of perfection, an Austrian-born actress with a face so flawless, MGM promoted her as the most beautiful woman in the world. But that beauty came at a cost, and it wasn't just skin deep. When Lamarr arrived in Hollywood in the late 1930s, studio executives were captivated by her exotic appeal, but uneasy about her old-world features. Behind closed doors, they pushed for adjustments, a rhinoplasty to narrow her nose, dental work to correct her bite, and even subtle surgery to raise her brow line, all in pursuit of a more mainstream face. Hedy complied silently, precisely. The pressure was immense. Her value to the studio rested on her remaining a living statue, perfectly symmetrical, endlessly desirable, but what they didn't want was her mind. Lamarr, a self-taught inventor, co-developed a frequency-hopping technology during World War II that would later become the basis for modern Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. When she offered the idea to the US military, she was brushed aside, told to stick to selling war bonds with your face. Hollywood wanted her beautiful, not brilliant. They could sculpt her face, light her to glow like porcelain, but her ideas, they buried. Was Hedy Lamarr a screen siren or a silenced genius hiding behind a mask built by men? In the end, it wasn't just her face that was redesigned. It was her entire identity. 5. Marlon Brando. The mask beneath the myth. By the 1950s, Marlon Brando was the very definition of raw masculinity. His chiseled jawline, sun-kissed skin, and intense gaze redefined what it meant to be a leading man, but few knew that even Brando, the supposed rebel, was also a carefully constructed illusion. Paramount and Warner executives were obsessed with his face. Early screen tests revealed asymmetries they found distracting. A slightly crooked nose from a childhood injury, uneven lips, and puffiness beneath the eyes. Rather than suggest surgery, the studios imposed a different kind of transformation, cosmetic manipulation through control. Before each shoot, Brando endured hours of strategic makeup and facial taping. Artists used transparent film to pull back his skin at the temples, tightening his features for close-ups. Cotton padding was placed in his cheeks to subtly alter the face shape depending on the role. In A Streetcar Named Desire, even his sweat was artificially applied to highlight bone structure. More disturbingly, Brando was pushed to train his expression, raising his eyebrows just enough, flaring his nostrils at cue, lowering his voice to suggest power. It wasn't just method acting, it was method designing. He may have rebelled against the system later in life, but in his rise to fame, Brando played by the industry's rules, even if it meant masking his real face behind a dozen subtle tricks. Was he the natural talent everyone believed, or the ultimate studio sculpture disguised as a maverick? 6. Lena Horne. Too light, too dark, never enough. Lena Horne had the voice of a goddess and the elegance of royalty. But in 1940 Hollywood, no amount of talent could free her from the color calculus of race and desirability. Born to a mixed-race family, Horne's skin tone was deemed problematic, too light to play maids, too dark to be a leading lady. MGM was caught in a paradox. They wanted her exotic appeal, but not her racial identity. Studio handlers attempted a grotesque solution: lightening creams, harsh powdering, and aggressive lighting techniques designed to mute her skin tone. Makeup artists layered foundation shades meant for white actresses, creating an artificial pallor under studio lights. Some directors even shot her in scenes designed to be easily cut when films played in the segregated South. But Lena fought back. She refused roles that degraded her. She demanded control over her image. Yet the industry responded with silence and sidelining. She was dubbed difficult, her contracts stalled, her scenes edited down or erased altogether. The real disguise wasn't hers, it was Hollywood's attempt to whitewash complexity, to sculpt an image they could market and suppress at the same time. Was Lena Horne punished for being too talented to ignore, but too real to accept? Her legacy endured. But in her prime, Lena wasn't just performing on camera, she was resisting erasure frame by frame. 7. Montgomery Clift, rebuilt after the spotlight. Montgomery Clift was Hollywood's golden boy, sensitive, brooding, and impossibly handsome. But one night in 1956, everything changed. Driving home from Elizabeth Taylor's house, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole. The collision shattered his face. The studio panicked. Clift's injuries were extensive: broken nose, crushed cheekbone, torn lips, nerve damage. Surgeons raced to reconstruct his face, not out of medical necessity, but to salvage his career. Skin was pulled. Bone fragments were pinned. His smile, once soft and devastating, became lopsided. His eyes lost their symmetry. When he returned to filming Raintree County, the difference was jarring. Directors shot him from one side only. Cinematographers blurred his image with soft focus. The man on screen was a patched version of the heartthrob audiences once knew. But Clift's story wasn't just about a tragic accident, it was about how Hollywood couldn't accept imperfection. Rather than letting him heal naturally, studios insisted he be rebuilt, fast and flawlessly. The pressure sent Clift spiraling into addiction, self-doubt, and eventual isolation. He became known as the longest suicide in Hollywood history. Was his face the tragedy, or was it the industry's obsession with symmetry that broke him? Montgomery Clift didn't just lose part of his face that night. He lost the version of himself the world had been taught to love, and Hollywood never forgave him for it. 8. Judy Garland, a face controlled by pills and protocol. To the world, Judy Garland was the girl who sang her way over the rainbow. But behind her youthful glow and expressive eyes was a relentless effort to keep her looking just right for the camera no matter the cost. When MGM cast her in The Wizard of Oz, executives worried she looked too plump, too plain, too human. They forced her onto a strict diet of black coffee, chicken broth, and amphetamines, not to lose weight, but to shrink her face to hollow her cheeks, to expose her cheekbones. Her nose was another problem. Though never officially altered, makeup artists applied heavy contouring daily to create the illusion of a slimmer, sharper nose. Lighting was adjusted scene by scene to hide the roundness of her features. Even her teeth were considered capped, whitened, and adjusted to avoid any imperfection under Technicolor scrutiny. But perhaps most haunting were the facial control protocols MGM enforced. Judy was taught to smile in a certain way, to angle her head precisely, to raise her eyebrows on cue, so the camera always saw what the studio wanted it to see. Was it performance or puppeteering? As Judy Garland grew older, the pills increased, uppers to keep her thin and wide-eyed, downers to sleep, and all to maintain a face that wasn't hers anymore but MGM's. The girl on the screen was magical, but the woman off-screen was engineered for profit. 9. Rock Hudson, sculpted to fit the frame. Rock Hudson wasn't born looking like a matinee idol. In fact, long before he became the square-jawed heartthrob of 1,950 seconds melodramas, he was Roy Harold Scherer Jr., a shy Midwestern mechanic with crooked teeth, a wide nose, and soft features that studio executives labeled unfilmable. When Universal Pictures signed him, they didn't just change his name, they remade his face. Hudson underwent extensive dental surgery to align his smile into perfection. His nose was subtly reshaped, just enough to narrow its bridge and sharpen the tip without drawing attention. He was taught how to move his jaw in profile shots, how to widen his stance to appear taller, how to use makeup to deepen his cheekbone. But the most jarring transformation wasn't surgical, it was behavioral. Hudson, a gay man in a violently closeted era, was coached to speak in a deeper register, walk with more masculine presence, and always be photographed with starlets on his arm. His new face became the template for American masculinity, but the man behind it was trapped, both physically and emotionally. Was it talent or symmetry that made him a star? Could Roy Scherer have survived Hollywood as himself? Rock Hudson died in 1985, a beloved icon. But the version of him that millions adored was sculpted frame by frame, lie by an industry that feared who he really was. 10. Rita Hayworth, the face that wasn't hers. When audiences fell in love with Rita Hayworth, they saw a sultry redhead with luminous skin and a perfectly sculpted hairline. What they didn't see was the woman-born Margarita Carmen Cancino, a Spanish-American dancer whose natural look was considered too ethnic for leading roles. Columbia Pictures had a plan. First, electrolysis, painful, relentless, and secret. The procedure raised her hairline by nearly 2 inches, erasing the low brow her heritage gave her. Then came the bleaching, not her hair, her skin. Executives wanted her lighter, whiter, more American. Rita endured chemical treatments that stung and peeled, sometimes leaving her unable to wear makeup for days. The transformation worked on camera, but off-screen, Hayworth admitted to feeling trapped between two selves, one born of blood and one built for fame. "They went to work on me like I was a product," she once confided to a friend. But by then, the world had already bought the illusion. Was her success a triumph of talent or of compliance? Would she have become a legend if she kept her original face? Rita Hayworth became the love goddess of the 1,940 seconds. But to do so, she had to erase Margarita Cancino, not just from credits but from the mirror. Behind every altered face in Golden Age Hollywood, there was often one man holding the scalpel. Dr. Henry G. Shires, a discreet Beverly Hills surgeon with no advertisements, no public face, just a growing list of clients who all happened to be under studio contract. His office, tucked behind tinted windows off Sunset Boulevard, became an unofficial extension of the casting department. Actors were sent there not for consultation, but for correction. Records suggest Dr. Shires performed rhinoplasties, chin augmentations, skin grafts, and even experimental facial tightening procedures decades before they became mainstream. He was the one who raised foreheads, tapered jawlines, and reshaped identities all in time for the next shooting schedule. Studios paid for the procedures, billed them as image development, and added confidentiality clauses that would make modern NDAs look lenient. In return, Shires never spoke publicly. He had no plaque on the wall, no interviews, just a waiting room filled with trembling hands and dreams at stake. Rumors swirled. One actress disappeared for a month and returned unrecognizable. A leading man reportedly fainted from pain mid-scene, his stitches still fresh beneath heavy pancake makeup. Dr. Shires didn't just modify faces, he molded the mythology of Hollywood itself. But when he died in 1963, his patient files vanished. Destroyed, hidden, or protected? No one knows. Because in a town built on illusion, even the hands that shaped it had to remain unseen. Hollywood's golden age promised perfection, but behind the glow of silver nitrate and studio, lights were faces stitched, bleached, and buried beneath makeup and silence. Identities rewritten, ethnicities erased. Fame hid beneath powder. These weren't makeovers, they were mandates. And the stars we adored were often the ones who gave up the most of themselves just to be seen. So now the question remains. Were these faces loved for who they were, or for who the industry forced them to become? Which of these stories unsettled you most? Do you believe the audience shares blame for demanding illusion over authenticity? Let us know in the comment. And if you want more secrets from behind the curtain, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The next story might be one you thought you already knew,